Hello, friends, and welcome back to Ashes in the Past. Thank you for joining us once again as we explore the remarkable true stories that time almost forgot. Settle in, get comfortable, and let's journey into another forgotten chapter of history. Take a look around your kitchen. It's probably sitting on a shelf, inside a jar, or hidden in foods you never expected. Sugar. Today, it feels so ordinary that most of us hardly think about it. We stir it into coffee, bake it into desserts, mix it into drinks, and consume it almost every single day. But there was a time when a single spoonful of sugar was considered a luxury fit for kings. People crossed continents to obtain it. Merchants built fortunes from it. Empires fought to control it. And millions of lives were forever changed because of the world's growing appetite for something sweet. Sugar didn't simply sweeten food. It transformed economies. It reshaped global trade. It fueled colonial expansion. And it became one of the driving forces behind one of history's greatest human tragedies. What began as a rare curiosity eventually became an everyday necessity, found in nearly every corner of the world. But that transformation came at a staggering cost. Behind every crystal of sugar lies a story of discovery, ambition, innovation, exploitation, and survival. It is a story that stretches across continents, spans thousands of years, and reaches into our lives even today. So how did a plant, growing quietly in tropical fields, become one of the most powerful commodities in human history? To answer that, we must travel back to the forests of South and Southeast Asia, where humanity first discovered the remarkable sweetness hidden inside a simple stalk of sugarcane. Long before sugar filled supermarkets, it grew wild in the tropical regions of South and Southeast Asia. At first, people did not know how to turn it into the white crystals we recognize today. They simply chewed the stalks of sugarcane, enjoying the sweet juice hidden inside the tough fibers. It was unlike anything else. In a world where sweetness usually came from fruits or honey, sugarcane offered something extraordinary, an abundant source of natural sweetness. Over time, people in the Indian subcontinent learned how to extract the juice, boil it, and produce solid crystals that were easier to store and transport. This innovation transformed sugar from a simple plant into a valuable commodity. The process was slow. It demanded skilled labor, large amounts of fuel, and careful craftsmanship. That made sugar rare. And rarity made it valuable. Travelers who encountered this remarkable substance carried stories of it to distant lands. Ancient Persian rulers admired it, calling it a reed that gives honey without bees. As trade expanded, knowledge of sugar-making spread beyond India into Persia and, later, across the growing Islamic world. For centuries, sugar remained a luxury. Only the wealthy could afford it. It was used as medicine, offered as an expensive gift, and served at royal feasts as a symbol of prestige. The world had discovered sweetness, but very few people could taste it. That was about to change, because a new generation of traders would carry sugar farther than ever before, transforming a rare delicacy into one of the world's most sought-after treasures. As trade routes expanded, sugar began a remarkable journey across continents. Persian merchants refined the techniques of sugar production, and after the rise of the Islamic caliphates, sugarcane cultivation spread across the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of the Mediterranean. Wherever it grew, sugar quickly became one of the most valuable commodities in the region. Europe was captivated. Returning crusaders brought stories of an extraordinary sweet substance they had encountered in the East. Soon, Wealthy nobles and royal courts developed a taste for it. But there was a problem. Sugar was incredibly expensive. Every shipment traveled long distances, and producing it required enormous amounts of labor. For most Europeans, sugar was far too costly to use in everyday cooking. Instead, it became a symbol of status. The wealthy displayed elaborate sugar sculptures at banquets. Doctors prescribed it as medicine. Kings presented it as a luxurious gift. Owning sugar meant displaying both wealth and power. Demand continued to grow. Merchants earned enormous profits. European kingdoms realized that controlling the sugar trade could bring immense riches. But importing sugar from distant lands was no longer enough. If Europe wanted more, it needed to produce sugar on a much larger scale. That ambition would soon send ships across the Atlantic and change the course of world history forever. When European explorers reached the Atlantic islands, and later the Caribbean and the Americas, they found something ideal for growing sugarcane. A warm climate, fertile soil, and vast stretches of land. It was the perfect environment for producing sugar on an unprecedented scale. Portugal and Spain were among the first to establish large sugar plantations, followed by Britain, France, and the Netherlands. As European colonies expanded, sugar plantations spread rapidly across the Caribbean and parts of South America. The results were extraordinary. Sugar that had once been reserved for kings began arriving in Europe by the shipload. Prices gradually fell. Demand rose even faster. But there was one enormous challenge. Growing and processing sugarcane was exhausting work. The cane had to be cut by hand, transported quickly before it spoiled, and crushed almost immediately after harvest. The work was relentless, dangerous, and required thousands of laborers. Plantation owners wanted more workers than local populations could provide. Instead of changing the system, they searched for another source of labor. That decision would reshape continents, devastate millions of lives, and tie sugar forever to one of history's darkest chapters. The world had discovered how to produce sweetness on a massive scale. Now it would reveal who paid the price. As Europe's appetite for sugar grew, so did the demand for labor. Plantation owners turned to the transatlantic slave trade, creating a system that would force millions of Africans into slavery. Men, women, and children were captured, transported across the Atlantic in brutal conditions, and sold to work on sugar plantations throughout the Caribbean and the Americas. For many, the journey itself was deadly. Those who survived faced relentless labor. From sunrise to sunset, enslaved workers cut sugarcane under intense heat, hauled heavy stalks to the mills, and worked among dangerous machinery and boiling vats. The work was exhausting, injuries were common, and conditions were often inhumane. Yet the plantations produced enormous profits. Sugar became one of the world's most valuable commodities, enriching merchants, plantation owners, and European empires. Ports flourished, fortunes were built, and entire economies came to depend on the trade. Behind every shipment of sugar was human suffering. The sweet crystals that reached European tables carried a cost that was rarely seen by the people who consumed them. Over time, resistance grew. Enslaved people fought for their freedom. Abolitionists challenged the morality of slavery. Governments slowly began to outlaw the trade, and eventually slavery itself across much of the Atlantic world. But by then, sugar had already changed the course of history. The question was no longer whether people wanted sugar. It was how to produce enough of it. without relying on the system that had fueled its rise. As the 19th century began, the sugar industry faced a turning point. The abolition of the slave trade, and later slavery in many regions, forced producers to rethink how sugar could be grown and processed. At the same time, wars and trade disruptions exposed Europe's dependence on imported sugarcane. A new solution emerged. Sugar could also be extracted from sugar beets. Although the idea had existed for years, improvements in farming and manufacturing made large-scale beet sugar production increasingly practical. Countries across Europe invested heavily in the new industry, reducing their reliance on tropical plantations. Factories transformed the process. Steam-powered machines crushed, refined, and packaged sugar faster than ever before. Production soared, costs fell, and sugar that had once been reserved for the wealthy became affordable for ordinary families. For the first time in history, sweetness became an everyday experience. Tea and coffee grew more popular. Bakeries expanded. Chocolate, jams, candies, and soft drinks reached larger markets. Sugar was no longer a symbol of luxury. It had become a daily habit. But the story didn't end there. As manufacturers discovered new ways to add sugar to processed foods, consumption began to rise beyond anything previous generations could have imagined. The commodity that had once been one of the rarest luxuries on Earth was about to become one of the most common ingredients in the modern diet. By the 20th century, sugar had become nearly impossible to avoid. It was no longer found only in desserts. It appeared in breakfast cereals, soft drinks, bread, sauces, yogurt, and countless processed foods that many people never considered sweet. As food production became increasingly industrialized, manufacturers discovered that sugar did more than improve taste. It also helped preserve food, enhance texture, and encourage customers to keep coming back. Consumption soared. In many countries, people began eating dozens of times more sugar than their ancestors had centuries earlier. What had once been a rare luxury had become an everyday expectation. But as sugar became a permanent part of modern diets, scientists began asking difficult questions. How much was too much? Researchers found growing links between excessive sugar consumption and health problems such as obesity, type 2 diabetes, tooth decay, and heart disease. While sugar itself is not inherently harmful in moderate amounts, diets high in added sugars became a major public health concern. The debate continues today. Governments encourage people to reduce added sugar. Food companies introduce low-sugar alternatives. Consumers read nutrition labels more carefully than ever before. Yet despite these changes, the world's appetite for sweetness remains remarkably strong. Sugar has shaped history for thousands of years. And even now, its influence is far from over. Today, sugar is one of the most common ingredients on Earth. It sweetens celebrations, comforts us during difficult moments, and quietly appears in countless foods we eat without a second thought. Yet the conversation surrounding sugar has changed. For centuries, people searched desperately for more of it. Now, many are trying to consume less. Doctors, nutritionists, and public health experts encourage moderation, while governments introduce measures such as nutrition labeling and, in some countries, taxes on sugary drinks to reduce excessive consumption. The goal is not to eliminate sugar. It is to better understand it. The story of sugar reminds us that even the most ordinary products can have extraordinary consequences. What began as a rare tropical plant influenced global exploration, transformed economies, fueled colonial expansion, shaped the lives of millions, and continues to affect public health today. Few ingredients have left such a profound mark on human civilization. Yet perhaps sugar's greatest lesson has nothing to do with sweetness. It is a reminder that every product has a story, every convenience has a history, and every everyday object may have changed the world in ways we rarely notice. So the next time you stir sugar into your coffee, or enjoy a piece of chocolate, remember that those tiny white crystals carry a history measured not only in centuries, but in exploration, innovation, sacrifice, and change. Because sometimes, the sweetest things leave the most complicated legacy. Today, sugar sits quietly on kitchen shelves across the world. It looks ordinary, familiar, almost invisible. Yet few everyday ingredients have shaped human history so profoundly. Sugar inspired exploration across oceans. It enriched merchants and empires. It transformed agriculture and global trade. It fueled industries. It influenced revolutions in manufacturing. And it became deeply intertwined with one of history's greatest human tragedies, the transatlantic slave trade. Its story is one of remarkable innovation and immense suffering, of prosperity and exploitation, of scientific progress and modern health challenges. No other common food tells quite the same story. Perhaps that is why sugar deserves to be remembered, not simply as an ingredient, but as a force that helped reshape civilization. It reminds us that history is often hidden in plain sight, not only in castles, battlefields, or ancient ruins, but in the objects we use every single day. A spoonful of sugar may seem insignificant, yet behind those tiny crystals lies a journey stretching across thousands of years, countless cultures, and millions of lives. The story of sugar is ultimately the story of humanity itself. A story of curiosity, trade, ambition, innovation, and the difficult choices that have always accompanied progress. Because history is not only written by kings and conquerors. Sometimes, it is written by the everyday things we take for granted. And few have changed the world more quietly, or more completely, than sugar.